Good evening. It's Tuesday, the 7th of October. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News, broadcasting from Jerusalem. We open on the Golan Heights, where two IDF soldiers were injured a short time ago, one moderately and one lightly, when there was an explosion near a military outpost on Mount Dov. Shortly after that, there was another explosion that caused no injuries. The first blast occurred near the disputed Sheba Farms area in the Golan Heights, near the Lebanese and Syrian borders. Details of the incident are as of yet unclear, but it has been reported that the blast struck troops as they traveled in an armored vehicle. The wounded were evacuated to hospital by helicopter. The Army responded by firing artillery at the source of the attack in southern Lebanon. In another sign of the tense relationship between the administration of U.S. President Barack Obama and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the White House delivered a public rebuke to Netanyahu yesterday after he said Washington's criticism of Israeli settlement building runs counter to American values. Following a meeting between the two leaders at the White House last week, the U.S. strongly condemned Israeli plans to give the go-ahead for building thousands of homes in Jerusalem. That prompted Netanyahu to return fire in an interview broadcast on American television Sunday, during which he said that he finds Washington's criticism of settlement policy to be baffling, against American values, and that it does not bode well for peace. White House spokesman Josh Earnest read a lengthy defense of U.S. policy toward Israel centered around the American values theme raised by the Prime Minister.
Well, I did see the Prime Minister's remarks, and it did seem odd for him to try to defend the actions of his government by saying that our response did not reflect American values. The fact is, American policy has been clear and unchanged under several administrations, both Democrat and Republican. We oppose any unilateral actions that attempt to prejudge final status issues, including the status of Jerusalem. These can only be legitimately determined through direct negotiations between the parties that this president has worked hard to try to facilitate. We would also note that the Prime Minister appeared only to be addressing our concerns about so on, and seemed to ignore our concern over reports that the Israeli government had moved forward the planning process in the sensitive area of Gavat Hamatos in East Jerusalem. That action is contrary to Israel's stated goal of negotiating a permanent status agreement with the Palestinians, and it would send a very troubling message if they were to proceed with tenders or construction. The fact is, when it comes to American values, it's American values that lend this country's unwavering support to Israel. It's American values that have led us to fight for and secure funding to strengthen Israel's security in tangible ways. It's American values that have led us to fund and build an Iron Dome system that have protected the lives of countless innocent Israeli citizens. It's American values that have led the United States to fully support Israel's right to defend itself, and it's American values that have led us to defend Israel in a variety of international forums, including a variety of United Nations forums. So it's clear how American values dictate, or at least guide, our thinking when it comes to our unwavering support for the nation of Israel.
Joining me now from our Tel Aviv studio to discuss the state of bilateral relations with the U.S. is former Deputy Foreign Minister and former Ambassador to Washington, Danny Ayalon. Good evening, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Sure.
Perhaps you can help to shed light on what it was that Prime Minister Netanyahu actually meant when he said that the U.S. criticism of Israel's building policy in Jerusalem is counter to American values.
Well, I think this was certainly not necessary, Aaron. This really touches a very exposed and deep nerve, especially in this administration, which has been accused by the Republicans and others in the United States of being un-American and other things. This is not for us to interfere. It sounds, and I'm sure that Prime Minister Netanyahu didn't mean it to sound partisan, but it did sound partisan, and it evoked a very harsh response, as we saw today. We don't need it. The United States doesn't need it. It doesn't help stability in the region. It doesn't build trust, which is so important now between the two leaders.
The new American consulate in Jerusalem is located very close to the Givat HaMatos site. Surely Washington must be aware that it is in an area that is intended to remain part of Israel according to any peace agreement. So why has there been so much of a fuss?
Well, I would say, Aaron, it's almost a knee-jerk reaction. All the issues of settlements and buildings, unfortunately I say that, but this is a fact. And this is also unfortunate that almost every time there is a high-level meeting, whether when Vice President Biden was here or before meetings in the White House, there are announcements which seem by the Americans as a provocation. The meeting should have been a very good meeting between the two leaders last week because, first of all, there is no specific deadline at the moment, not for settlement freeze, not for negotiations with the Palestinians, because it's quite sure that Abu Mazen and the Palestinians are not there. So that was really a very good background for an excellent meeting, which I'm sure it was, because there are so many intertwining interests against ISIS and Iran and of course the entire region and many other things, intelligence, strategic defense cooperation. So to have this fly in the ointment really doesn't serve any interest, certainly not ours.
Well, as you point out, within the past few weeks, Netanyahu has addressed the United Nations General Assembly. He held his White House meeting with President Obama. And then he followed it up with a media blitz on U.S. television networks. But now we are hearing this sharp reprimand from the White House. In your view, has the Prime Minister achieved any progress at all in getting his various messages across?
Well, perhaps with some in the American public. But again, I'm not sure it helped the Israeli interests. And sometimes it is better to be, as we say, to be wise than to be just. I support, of course, the case of the Prime Minister, certainly in the UN. He had a very good speech, and I'm sure he had his talking points with the President. But sometimes, publicly, we should not say things that may just come back and haunt us. It's better to iron out some differences, especially with our best friends, the Americans, behind closed doors.
Ambassador Danny Ayalon, thanks so much for sharing your insight with us this evening.
Thank you very much, and Chag Sameach, Aaron.
Chag Sameach, Danny. Thank you. In other news, a mysterious blast at Iran's Parchi nuclear facility has reportedly killed 2 people. The incident occurred yesterday, just as members of the International Atomic Energy Agency arrived in Tehran for talks. We get more in this report from IBA's Margo Dukevich.
All we know is that the official Iranian news agency IRNA reported a mysterious explosion that rocked the country's Parchi nuclear site southeast of Tehran yesterday, killing 2 people and injuring several. Today, members of the International Atomic Energy Agency arrived in Tehran for talks as part of the ongoing investigation into Iran's nuclear program. It is the first meeting between the sides since Iran missed an August 25th deadline, requiring it to answer questions concerning its nuclear intentions. While details of yesterday's explosion remain sketchy, Iranian media said the 2 were killed in an explosion that set off a fire in a military facility located in the Parchi nuclear complex. Some Iranian media reports said the explosion was so intense it shattered windows of buildings some 14 kilometers from the site. It is unclear whether the explosion was the result of a work accident or sabotage. The Parchin site is under constant satellite supervision, not only by Israel but also the United States and other countries. A report by Israel's Ynet news site alleges that the US has the ability to collect air samples from the site, and within days the West will know what caused the explosion and whether radioactive material was detected. Since 2005, Iran has refused IAEA inspectors access to the Parchin complex. Meanwhile, Iran is also facing a November 24th deadline with the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council and Germany to reach an agreement over its nuclear industry and scale back its uranium enrichment program in exchange for the West lifting sanctions. In his recent speech before the UN General Assembly, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called Iran the most dangerous regime in the world and warned the West not to be deceived by Iran's true intentions. Iran's nuclear military capabilities must be fully dismantled, he said. Moga Dudkevich, IBA News.
The besieged Syrian town of Kobani may be conquered by Islamic State forces very soon. This according to local Kurdish officials, who today confirmed that ISIS has captured the strategic high ground above the town known as Mashta Nur Hill. Amateur video was released by ISIS a short time ago, in which a spokesman boasted that nothing will stop the fighters from entering the city and destroying the infidels who live there. The radical jihadi forces have been fighting to take the town for 3 weeks, and conquest would give them control of a lengthy stretch of the Syrian-Turkish border. At least 160,000, mostly Kurdish Syrians, have fled the town and surrounding villages into Turkey. Coalition airstrikes have been attempting to stop the ISIS advance, but seemingly to no avail. The government intends to tighten control of those people seeking to enter the country from Ebola-affected nations in West Africa. That decision was made at an inter-ministerial meeting convened by Prime Minister Netanyahu amid global concern about the spreading of the virus. The Foreign Ministry has issued a travel advisory calling on Israelis to avoid visiting Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. The Health Ministry is also recommending that all Israeli nationals coming back from any of those countries go to emergency rooms if they develop fevers within 21 days of their return. At this hour, the Cabinet is considering the proposal from Finance Minister Yair Lapid for the 2015 state budget. And while much has been agreed upon, there are still battles being waged. IBA's Eli Wogelenter has more.
The 328 billion shekel draft for 2015 went to the Cabinet for approval today, with the Treasury rushing to get the spending package to the Knesset in time for it to be approved by the end of the year. The Treasury still faces a fight with the Defense Ministry, which is demanding an additional 5 billion shekels for next year, on top of the 6 billion shekels in extra spending already agreed on. The Defense Ministry says it needs the extra budget to help defray the cost of war in Gaza this summer, as well as prepare for the next military engagement. The Treasury plans to resist pressure from the Defense Ministry to deal with other pressures. For example, in accordance with pre-approved plans, the budget for education will increase 1.8 billion shekels, which will go toward extending the school year for 1st through 4th graders, moving toward free education for 3- and 4-year-olds. Specific groups are also addressed in the new budget, like Holocaust survivors, who will receive an annual grant of 3,600 shekels. This in addition to the 2,200 shekels they will be receiving as their monthly grant, which previously had been set at 1,800 shekels. One program that was saved was state support for Taglit Birthright in Massa. Finance Minister Yair Lapid had wanted to cut their budget, but was stopped by the Prime Minister, a decision welcomed by the Jewish Agency, which helps facilitate the programs. Lapid commented today on the renewed public outcry over high food and cost of living prices in Israel, saying, "They are right, these things are unbearable." But he defended the 2015 state budget, saying, "This is not a dream budget. There is no such thing as a dream budget, but this is a good and social budget. This is a budget which helps the periphery." As previously announced, the 328 billion shekel budget set a deficit target of 3.4% in conjunction with Lapid's promise not to raise taxes. If the Cabinet approves the spending package with small changes, as expected, the Finance and Justice Ministries will have to work quickly to draft the budget legislation in time to get it to the Knesset by November 1st. That would give lawmakers enough time to debate the package and hold their final vote by December 31st. Eli Wogelenter, IBA News.
Some good news now. The crisis at the Postal Authority has come to an end. After weeks of work sanctions at the authority and other government offices, the Histadrut Labor Federation announced this afternoon that a resolution has been reached between the Finance and Communications Ministries. The dispute was over the firing of 1,500 full-time employees who were to be replaced by contract workers. According to the new agreement, 1,200 will now lose their jobs. The deal also reduces the number of days of mail distribution to just 2.5 times a week, but post offices will be open until 8 p.m. Controversial Balad MK Hanin Zoabi today petitioned the High Court against a decision by the Knesset Ethics Committee to remove her from the plenum for 6 months. The Arab parliamentarian was slapped with a punishment after she said that the murderers of the 3 Israeli teenagers in June were not terrorists. She filed her petition together with the ACRI Association for Civil Rights in Israel and Adalah, the Legal Center for Arab Minority Rights. Zoabi is arguing that the Knesset decision is tantamount to political prosecution and claims that she has not committed any ethical offenses. She's also insisting that the penalty is unprecedented in its severity. 4 people were injured this afternoon when an 80-year-old man lost control of his car and rammed into a crowded coffee shop on Tel Aviv's Lincoln Street. The victims were taken to Ichilov Hospital, where one was described as being in moderate condition, with the others suffering from light injuries. Witnesses at the site said that the driver was attempting to park his car on the sidewalk when he apparently hit the accelerator instead of the brakes. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Transportation Minister Israel Katz attended a ceremony inaugurating the beginning of construction for the final tunnel of the Jerusalem-Tel Aviv high-speed rail line. The passage will be the largest and the longest underground road ever built in the country and will be a double tunnel running parallel from the Shar Chagai intersection on Route 1 to Mevaseret Zion, covering nearly 15 kilometers in distance. The complex engineering project is scheduled to be completed at the end of 2017. Once the tracks are laid, passengers will be able to travel from the capital to Tel Aviv in just 28 minutes, including stops at Ben Gurion Airport, Moda'in, and Latrun. The Prime Minister told those gathered that the ultimate goal is to have a high-speed railway that will connect the entire country. The 8-day Sukkot holiday begins at sundown tomorrow evening. The Arba Minim, or 4 kinds of species, are now being sold across the country, as we see here at this special Sukkot market in Netanya, where consumers are shopping for a palm branch known as the lulav in Hebrew, 2 willows, or aravot, 3 myrtles, or hadassim, and the citron, the famous etrog. During the festival, the first 3 species are neatly bundled and held together with the etrog, over which a blessing is performed. The best place for doing this mitzvah is the sukkah, outdoor holiday booth. Residents in Jewish communities have been busy building and decorating their temporary dwellings to symbolize the exodus from Egypt. Veteran diplomat Yoram Ettinger had an interesting response to IBA reporter Margot Dukevich's question who he would most like to invite to his sukkah.
If I could have resurrected Christopher Columbus, I would have invited him, because Christopher Columbus arrived to America during the 15th century on the 7th day of the Feast of Tabernacle, Sukkot. This is Hoshana Rabbah, namely this is the annual day of deliverance and miracles according to Jewish religion, Jewish tradition. This is the part of the foundation which explains the very special covenant between the U.S. and Israel. It transcends mutual strategic threats. It transcends economic or military interest. It is embedded in, one may call it, Judeo-Christian values, also represented by Sukkot, by the Feast of Tabernacles, and Christopher Columbus represents that, and therefore every year Columbus Day always falls around the holiday of Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacle.
Interesting. Well, Jerusalemites are today enjoying the second and final day of the Formula One Road Show. Some 300,000 Capitol residents and visitors from around the country were on hand as race cars roared around the walls of the Old City as part of the second annual event that is known to snarl traffic in the capital for about 48 hours. Over a dozen professional international teams took part in the motorsport extravaganza, including well-known drivers from Porsche, Ferrari, and Audi. Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat said that the road show acquired political meaning after the event was postponed from the summer due to Operation Protective Edge.
It is our duty and goal to develop Jerusalem for the benefit of the world to enjoy. We have millions of people every year come to the holy sites and seek other opportunities complementary to enjoy our city of Jerusalem. It was very important for me that we have the road show this year. And as we all know, we had some challenges this summer, security challenges, mainly in the south part of Israel. And we decided to postpone the show, but it was very important for me that Jerusalem goes back to normal and we have the show as we had other festivals in the city of Jerusalem, to make sure people understand that we will keep course, keep the strategy, and this is an amazing event for me. Besides the fact that for motor sport lovers like myself and others, to see the cars here is a dream, really a dream come true.
Now, be sure to mark this next event on your Sukkot holiday calendar. A benefit concert will be held in Jerusalem this coming Saturday night, paying tribute to the lone soldiers of the IDF and the Lone Soldier Center in memory of fallen combat soldier Michael Levin. The event will take place at the beautiful new Olmaya Hall on the Haas Promenade. Entertainment includes the 10-piece reggae band Waka Chaka, a rising star on the Israeli musical scene, Nadavia, and the singer recently featured on The Voice, Bar Rosner Wax. The event will also feature guest speaker, former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren. That's this Saturday night, October 11th. Doors will open at 8:30 p.m. at the Olmaya Event Hall on the Haas Promenade.
Them a wise man rule, them a treat us like a fool. Them a plant their religion pon our minds in the school. Watch them treat me like a punk, smoke all my skunk. Them a wine and the rice cream cost 100 million. But me say they don't give a damn about them people on the street. While them big on caviar, we do not have food to eat.
That looks great, and for what a worthy cause. Now, taking a look at local finance, and the shekel today lost strength against all major foreign currencies, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were up across the board. Here's a look at the late afternoon numbers. The IBA weather team says we can expect warm and wet conditions over the next few days. Tomorrow we will see fair to partly cloudy skies with another slight increase in temperatures, accompanied by the chance of scattered showers by evening. Here's the forecast at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this evening. This programming note before leaving you, IBA News will be broadcast at our special holiday time of 5:10 p.m. both tomorrow and on Thursday. Laura Cornfield will be at this desk tomorrow to bring you the latest breaking news.